Hello, my dear church boys, and welcome back to yet another episode of St. Robert's Daygame and Dating Podcast. And this time we're going to be talking about London Daygame model. Is it too robotic? Because there are guys who are trying it, they're going out, they're technically doing all the right things, they're saying all the right lines, but it still isn't working. So the question is it because London Daygame model doesn't work because it's too robotic, or maybe are they making other mistakes? London Daygame model is a two-edged sword. From one side, it's a very effective way for learning Daygame. Over more than half a decade of coaching, I've communicated with hundreds and hundreds of Daygamers, and I always look at two things. First, how good is the guy in terms of results? Is he going out and, approaching, maybe getting some flaky numbers, but isn't getting any real results? Or is it the guy with, 30, 50, or even more Daygame lays? And the second thing I'm looking at is, what does this guy believe in? Who is he following? What approach to Daygame is he using, etc.? And if I see someone who is not getting real results, then, well, his opinions about what model is best, what works and what doesn't, his opinion about those things doesn't matter because it's purely speculation. He can't back up his opinions with real results. But when I meet someone who's really good on getting good results and has a minimum of 30 Daygame lays, I always look at, okay, what does this guy believe? Who is this guy following? What approach to Daygame is this guy using? And, well, over all of these years and all the Daygamers that I've met, the good ones, I really have to say that at least 90% of the really, really good guys that I've met either are using London Daygame model, or they started with London Daygame model and then maybe at some point started dropping some structure and moved into a little bit different direction. But they definitely started in a very structured way. Well, but as I said, it's a two-edged sword, and the other side of London Daygame model is the streets are full with guys running around and calling all girls Italian. They're using the same openers, stacks, copy-paste stories and text that someone else came up with. Instead of using London Daygame model and filling the framework or filling the template with their own stacks and openers and stories that are true to them and represent their personality, they're simply copying stuff that other guys came up with, and they're running around calling all girls Italian in Zlote Terasy in Warsaw. London Daygame model works if it's used correctly, but you still have a lot of guys who are technically doing everything correct. They're saying the right lines. They're using everything as in a book, but still girls are rejecting them right after the opener. And I recently coached two students who had this exact problem. Their stop was good and they were saying the right things, but as soon as the girls heard the compliment, they instantly rejected them. All it took to make more girls stay in a conversation was a tiny adjustment in the beginning of the set. But of course, that wasn't the end of the story. There were other things they had to improve their Daygame to start getting numbers that actually respond and come out on dates, but more on that later. First, let's understand why were these guys getting rejected right after the opener. Even when a guy learns all the lines and delivers them word by word perfectly, they're not gonna work if the guy is too robotic. And this is a big problem for guys who believe that technique is the only thing that's important to Daygame. It's not a good idea to neglect all the other aspects of Daygame, like your style, grooming, learning to improvise, having a positive vibe in life, etc. I've seen a bunch of thumbnails on YouTube of videos claiming that London Daygame model doesn't work because it makes you too robotic, but these guys are missing the whole point of using a structured approach to Daygame while learning. When I start working with a new student, I will make sure their lines are perfect. We will take the same framework that the London Daygame model normally uses, and we will, plug and play with the pre-opener and opener and stacks for each new student. There isn't a lot of point running around calling all girls Italian. That is stupid. That being said, still, when they are learning, they will be using copy-paste line with every interaction they start. That will be their copy-paste line, not a line someone else came up with, but it's still going to be the same line in each conversation. Why would I teach guys copy-paste lines? Well, this is the part people misunderstand about structured daygame. The goal is not to be running around and using copy-paste lines. But if you know exactly what you will say when you start the conversation, you don't have to think about it. It's one less thing you have to worry about, and you have more brain capacity to focus on things like your delivery, your voice, your posture, and other things that are, well, I'll say more important than the words you're actually saying. In the beginning, students are very stressed. I might be standing right behind the girl showing him number clothes, but the student won't even see me even though I'm right in front of them. That's because he's too stressed. He has to think about too many things at the same time, and everything outside of him and the girl is invisible to him. But then over time, they become more comfortable in that situation. The delivery becomes calmer and more natural. And then usually there comes a point where I can hear them starting to make a mistake, but then they pause, they realize, wait, this is wrong, and then I can hear them do the perfect thing, fix their mistake, say the right thing instead. And this is the moment that always makes me happy when I'm coaching someone. It means they are aware of what's happening in the set. They can observe what's happening and come up with the perfect things to say. This moment always makes me very proud of the student. And at this moment, I know, great, he's comfortable, he's not that stressed anymore, and we can start trying new stacks for each girl. We can start experimenting with different openers and pre-openers, and over time start working on teasing and storytelling. I have a very linear approach to coaching because if your stop is bad, then you won't have a lot of opportunities to practice your opener because, well, most girls will just walk around you. And if you are bad at delivering your opener, many girls will say they have to go, they're late, they have a boyfriend, so you won't get opportunities to practice your stacking. If instead of good stacks, you're using boring questions or using really bad stacks, then instead of telling you what she does for a living, where she's from, where she's going to or coming from, good topics you could talk about, instead of that, she will realize, oh, this guy is boring, and again, she will leave. Whereas if you fix your stop, you're going to get a lot of opportunities to practice your opener. If your opener is good, you're going to get a lot of opportunities to practice your stacking. Then you're going to get topics. You'll have more opportunities to practice your teasing, storytelling. Boom, you're going to get to more hook points. You're going to be grounding and then closing. Of course, challenging, qualification, all that stuff in the middle. So I do prefer coaching in a very linear way. So if you are in the same problem and the girls are rejecting you right after the opener, what should you do? Well, without hearing your sets, I can't tell you exactly what your mistakes are, but I did just coach two guys who had this same problem. They were the girls were rejecting them right after the compliment, and the small thing we changed was stupidly small, but as soon as we did that, we got completely different reactions. Their mistake was the delivery. Many guys think that if they say the right thing, the girl will stay and have a nice chat with them. Well, that is partially true, because if your teasing and storytelling is bad and you're just asking super boring questions, the girl will leave. But in the beginning of the conversation, whether she stays for a little bit to see if she wants to chat with you more, or she just rejects you right after you say she looks nice, has nothing to do with what you're saying. It's more about how you're saying that. The delivery is the most important part at this moment. She's going somewhere, thinking about something, and boom, there you are, stopping her and starting the conversation, and she will listen to a few words that you have to say to understand whether she wants to stay longer. These girls, as soon as they understood what the guys wanted, ejected. Well, what the guy should have done instead is to make sure the girl has 100% stopped and is paying full attention to them even before they get to the compliment stacking and everything else. All we had to do was add a little pause after hi and make sure they're speaking much, much slower than they think they have to speak. And quickly we went from, hey, sorry, I know this is really random, I saw you across the street and I thought you look very nice, to, Hey, sorry, hi. I know this is really random, but I saw you from across the street and you look really nice. I did have to say hi. What I noticed about you was blah, 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 blah. It's pretty much the same words. All that changed was the delivery, but as soon as we fixed that, the girls were staying there, they were giggling, they were investing in a conversation, giving topics to talk about, and in general having much better responses. And I know that this isn't something that's gonna magically turn you into a great day gamer, and these guys also had to do much more work to get to a level where the girls were actually investing in a conversation and opening up and hooking and all of those good things. But you have to understand that there are very many small nuances in Daygame sets like these ones that will either make or break. And this is exactly why it's a good idea to use a copy-paste line in each set while you are still learning Daygame, because then you don't have to worry about all the things. You don't have to come up with stuff to say, because if you do that, you are going to be so stressed your delivery is going to be complete crap. Whereas if you know what you're going to say already, you can only focus on your delivery. But I realized that delivery is a bigger problem than I thought. Well, you might have noticed that I'm doing much less content on YouTube and on the podcast. That's because I like to do in-depth technical content where I explain kind of smaller, deeper nuances and teach guys exactly what to do in their day game sets. And whenever I'm creating content for YouTube and for podcasts, I have to kind of take into account, will this get clicks? Will this get me new students? Because after all, this is what I do for a living and I have been doing full-time for a living for more than half a decade. And these in-depth things are not what get clicks on YouTube and on podcasts. And that's why when I realized I want to work with guys that are actually going out, that are taking action, and that are more dedicated, I created my private community and online coaching program where I created a lot of in-depth stuff, teaching all the smallest nuances, way deeper actually than I've done on any YouTube videos or podcast episodes. And I really loved creating content like that. But then after a few months, I realized that even if I give guys all the smallest nuances they have to understand, sometimes they will still not recognize the mistakes they're making in their conversations, or maybe they will recognize those mistakes. But they're making, 10 different mistakes and they can't really understand which 1, 2, or 3 mistakes are the most important ones that they should focus on first. And to fix that, we actually started doing free monthly group coaching calls where a coach would listen to sets sent in by the members and then point out their exact mistakes, help fix their delivery, and then say, listen, these are the 1, 2, maybe 3 most important mistakes you should focus on. That this is exactly how you should do that for the next month until the next coaching call. And this very quickly improved results for the guys that appeared to be stuck. Well, so what can you do to improve your delivery? Well, first of all, you have to start recording your day game sets. You can try listening back to them. Maybe you will hear your own mistakes, or maybe you have high-level wings who have, I would say, at least 30 day game lays. If someone has less than 30 day game lays, they're getting laid, but they don't have like a full understanding of the model. So if you have wings like that, maybe they're fine with listening to your sets and giving you some feedback. Make sure that those wings they understand London Daygame model. That's how they started. That's what they're doing, because there are guys that are exceptions. I've met guys that have very, very good results. They're doing their own thing. It's completely unstructured, but those are really kind of exception wunderkind guys, and the thing with their method, it's impossible to replicate what they're doing. So make sure you are kind of asking these questions to the right wings. Or you can join our private community and online coaching program and get some feedback on your recordings during the monthly group coaching calls or one-on-one coaching calls as well. You'll find all the information about it and how to join by clicking the link in the description. But now let's talk to the next problem that you will sooner or later face. If you keep using these copy-paste lines, even with good delivery, sooner or later, you will become robotic. And when you become robotic, the reactions will be worse. And this is a moment when a lot of guys say, hey, I'm feeling robotic, I'm gonna improvise. And it's a terrible idea because, again, you won't have enough brain capacity to focus on everything at once, and it will all get kind of messed up. So there are a few other things you can do instead. First, the simplest method, you can come up with a new line, come up with a new pre-opener, new opener, maybe try out new stacks. And then when you have that line, again, test it with a bunch of girls, do it like 10, 20, 50 times, whatever. Once you're comfortable with that, the next thing you can do is you can try coming up with a custom stack for each girl you open. This doesn't mean improvising with the stack once you are in a conversation already. With the second and third stack, you can improvise. There's nothing wrong with that, just to clarify. But with the first one, what I mean is when you see a girl on the street, think, hey, what's a stack I could use with her? Look at how she looks, what she's wearing, what's her vibe. Is she walking fast, slow? Is she in chill mood? Does she look angry? I think, what's a stack I could use for this girl? And then go in and try that stack. This doesn't mean that you should be walking behind a girl for 2 minutes trying to come up with a stack. No, it's a thing that should take you maybe 5 to 10 seconds max, and then you instantly go in and do your job. And the third option is you can use reverse stacking. Reverse stacking is my favorite thing to teach students if we are in cities that have seen a lot of day gamers where you would normally get a lot of rejections. Reverse stacking solves that, and you'll find all about it if you are in a private community in the topic that's called Why Some Guys Learn Day Game Slower. And if later you want to start improvising, that's totally fine, but start with something simple, let's say stacks. Remember, we're working on everything in a linear fashion, because if your stacks are shit, you're not going to find out where she's coming from, where is she going, where is she from, what does she do for a living, all these nice topics that you can use to tease and storytell. And if you don't get these topics, the conversation is just going to end there. And once you're getting good responses to your improvised stacks, you can of course start dropping even more and more of the structure and kind of improvise with more and more stuff. But that's later. Don't do that if you're not getting laid yet. The goal is not to run around calling all girls Italian, using copy-paste lines, etc. The goal is to be able to chat with any girl in any situation about any topic that comes on. But that's not how you get there. You get there by learning structured game. And then once you are at around maybe 8 day game lays, you start really dropping the training wheels and kind of learning to become a better conversationalist overall. A while back, I sat down and I really looked at many day gamers that I know, and I looked at why some guys succeed and why some guys fail. And I came up with 5 very important parts of day game, 5 reasons why guys really fail in day game. First one was their style, their looks, their grooming. If, a lot of guys think that if they're saying the right things, they can look like shit and it's going to work. And then, they're running around the streets really looking like bums and expecting good results. And of course, they're only getting rejections. Second thing was structured game. A lot of them just neglected structure. They tried to improvise, and because of that, the delivery was terrible and nothing really was working. But then the third reason guys failed was some became too structured. They learned the structured game, but then they became these robots running around using the same stacks all the time and way too many times, because there comes a time where you have to start dropping the training wheels. You have to kind of learn natural game, but that's a little bit later. Fourth reason was guys that have in general negative attitude towards life, very negative beliefs about themselves and about women, especially the red pill guys. And the fifth reason was day gaming in the wrong locations. Maybe it was day gaming in cities that are too hard for the guy, or maybe they learned in a city that's too easy, and then they thought, oh, I know game, and then they go back to their city and all of a sudden it's not working anymore. This is one of the reasons I'm always very careful with where I coach students. That's why I like to hop on a call with every guy I coach so we can kind of get to know each other. I can understand where they are in their day game and what would be a good location for them that wouldn't be too easy, but also wouldn't be too hard. As you see in these kind of 5 reasons why guys fail in day game, or 5 things they have to learn, 5 pillars of day game, as I like to call them. As you see, structured game is in the second position here. So it's very important. You can't skip it. For most guys, it's impossible to skip structured game and really become good. But you have to understand that it also means that at some point you have to drop the training wheels and you have to move on to other things in game. And of course, there are guys that are exceptions to this rule. There are guys who are just doing their own thing completely, like being just naturals. And I've met guys like that, real wunderkinds, but the thing is, if you meet these guys, you will see that their method isn't really easy to duplicate. The guys that I've met who are like that, no one is able to duplicate their method. It's sort of their own thing. That's what they're doing, and that's it. So the way I look at learning Daygame is very simple. If you have like a bunch of groups of guys, have 100 guys in each group, and then you gave the different method of learning Daygame to each of these groups. Well, I'm looking at which method would get good results for the highest percentage of all of these guys. And with my experience so far with all the day gamers that I've met, especially the good guys that I've met, the really experienced guys, and with more than half a decade of coaching, I have to say that the most effective way for learning, if done correctly, is still London Daygame model, and it isn't even close. And it doesn't matter whether you are in Europe or the different parts of the USA, maybe New York City, or maybe you're in Latin America or Asia. It's, I've coached in very different parts of the world, and if I haven't coached in some part of the world, then I've had students from that part of the world, and I just have to say London Daygame model works absolutely everywhere if used correctly. If you want to do a deeper dive in the London Daygame model and the way I teach Daygame, you can join our private community and online coaching program, where you'll find a bunch of in-depth content. You'll find infills from me and other advanced Daygamers. We have free monthly group coaching calls and a bunch of other things. You'll find all the details about it and how to join by clicking the link in the description. Guys, that's it for this time. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next podcast episode. Ciao, guys.